Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Lorber. I'm the director of Rain Taxi, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 20th Twin Cities Book Festival. We're on the third day of our virtual festival this year. We're sorry we can't be with you in person, but we're having a lot of fun online, and there are so many great things happening. We have 19 of these live author events. If you've missed any from the past 2 days, you can watch the replays, of course. There's some great ones coming up today as well. We've got some pre-recorded events in our Minnesota Writers Mashup and our new chapbook launch featuring Black writers of the Twin Cities. And we've got an amazing exhibit hall filled with publishers, organizations, and authors who all want to share their latest releases with you. We know if you look around the website, you'll find a lot to enjoy. For now, I'm thrilled to introduce this session. It features two of the most powerful children's book writers talking about a book they teamed up to write. This is a dream book for me because when I was growing up, Muhammad Ali was one of my heroes. I wish I'd had this book then. I'm thrilled to have it now. Kwame Alexander is a poet, educator, and the best-selling author of over 30 books, including the Newbery Medal winning middle grade novel, The Crossover. He's also the founding editor of an imprint called Versify, which aims to change the world one word at a time. I love that. James Patterson is the world's best-selling author. He's maybe especially known for his characters and series, and also for his collaborations, like this one today and one with President Bill Clinton, among others. Like Kwame, he also wants to change the world for the better, and he has donated books and scholarships.
I do it one sentence at a time.
To so many in that effort. Again, this pair of wonderful authors is going to discuss becoming Muhammad Ali, and to help guide our conversation, we have with us Holly Weinkauf, the owner of Red Balloon Bookshop here in the Twin Cities. Red Balloon is the official bookseller for all of our festival's children's events, and we're really happy she can be here to steer this conversation. You also see with us on the screen our ASL interpreter, AJ. ASL interpretation is sponsored by the University of Minnesota Libraries, and we're grateful for their support. I want to remind all our viewers that you can ask questions by using the button at the bottom of the screen. You can buy books from Red Balloon at that link, and you can donate to Rain Taxi if you choose. We are a nonprofit, and while it's our honor to put on this free festival, every dollar you send us will go toward helping us start the 2021 event, whatever that may look like. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks to all of you great authors, and take it away, Holly.
All right, thank you, Eric. What an honor it is for me to be here with both Kwame Alexander and James Patterson. We are live, but in different places. I just learned that Kwame's in London. I think Jim is in Florida, I'm guessing. Is that where you are? Mm-hmm. Yep, and I'm here at the bookstore. We are allowing a few customers in for limited hours. So that's what's happening upstairs. I'm down in our basement. And behind me, you'll see some author boards. If we were live, I would have one of these for both Jim and Kwame to sign, but we can't do that. But I don't know if anybody can see it, but behind me is a board from 2 years ago that Kwame Alexander signed when he was here for his book Swing. So again, honored to be here and be part of this conversation. So to start, I'm just so curious if you can tell us how this project started. How did you two get together to write about Muhammad Ali?
We'd actually done a couple events together at schools. That's how we met and got to be friendly. And I knew Kwame was a big fan of Muhammad Ali. Go ahead, Kwame.
No, I was just going to say that Jim and I were playing a game of one-on-one, and I was winning 11-1.
That's not true. He thinks because he's bigger than me that he's better than me.
Hey, look, Holly, I've just like everyone else, I know James Patterson, from his celebrity. as the world's best-selling author. But more importantly, what I remember and what I recognized when I first got that call, was that bookseller bonuses, providing scholarships to educators and librarians. Like, it's one thing to be, a big-time author who sells a ton of books. It's another thing to put your money where your mouth is and really begin to, change the world, literally, change people's lives, like Pamela Kinger Horn, who's here, who received one of those bookseller bonuses. So it was a no-brainer for me that I wanted to work with a guy, with a writer, with a human being who, really was about making the world a better place on the page and on the stage.
And so how did it begin? Did you reach out to Jim? Did he reach out to you?
Muhammad Ali's estate reached out to me, and then I reached out to Kwame.
Okay.
And we talked about it, and started talking about what might be the tone of voice for the book, which is important. What's the tone? And we didn't want to write a book that was just one of these sort of like, here's a kid. And so where the tone came from actually was when you start thinking about the way Ali talked as an adult, and the humor and the rhymes and and that raised the whole tone of the book for us and made it exciting to put it together. And the book consists of prose and poetry. I wrote the poetry and Kwame wrote the prose. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you know did you know all along that it would have that combination of being told partly in verse and partly in prose?
I think instinctively we knew it, just as writers, and we know what we excel at. And so it sort of organically came together once we knew the story.
Well, and one thing, I noticed, like Eric, I grew up at a time where Muhammad Ali was part of our household. I grew up with two brothers and a dad who were big fans. So I was so excited to read the book. And one of the things I appreciate about it is, there are many things, but it shows this larger than life figure just growing up as a kid and dealing with the same challenges that many kids deal with. The other thing I really appreciate about it was how the verse really does capture the drive and energy of Muhammad Ali. So it just seems like, a good fit to be writing it, that you chose to write it in that style. Now, so another question I have for you two, writing together. Both of you have written a lot. You both are editors. How was that process of working together? Were you editing each other's parts? Just tell us more.
A little bit of that. A long time ago, I wrote a book with a Swedish mystery writer. And when I went over to Sweden, unlike here where you're lucky if you get a couple of interviews, we had 47 interviews in Stockholm on the book that we wrote together. And they kept going like, well, how could a Swede and an American ever get along, And there were two things, and it relates, I think, to Kwame and I in this book. One, respect for one another. And secondly, we listened. That's the key thing. And we listened. So, if he had thoughts on the prose, I listened, and the structure and the whole thing, we just listened to one another.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I think the trust thing is really important. I know Jim knows how to tell a story pretty well. I know how to write a poem pretty well. It was still work, it was still, challenges as writing is, but it was fun. It was good work. And in terms of the voice, I had to immerse myself in all things Ali and Louisville. Not just the books that we read as research, but being in Louisville and spending time at 3302 Grand Avenue in the pink house where Cassius Clay grew up, and walking in the backyard and sort of just, peeking through the window and reading the poems that were framed and looking at the couch in the living room. And just, I had to immerse myself. And I think it's that age old, thing. It's if you put your butt in the chair if you just do the work, eventually the rhythm, will be discovered and the story will reveal itself and the voice will come to life. And I think that's what happened.
And Holly, you mentioned something earlier about this notion of kids being able to identify with him as a kid. And by the way, for those that don't know, when he was growing up in Louisville, his name was Cassius Clay, and then he changed it to Muhammad Ali in his early 20s. So when we say Cassius Clay, that was his name growing up. But we did want kids to. I mean, Kwame and I have the same theory about books for kids. That when a kid picks up the book, we want them to not put it down until they're finished, and when it's done, we want them to say, "Give me another book." So that's a key thing for us, because it doesn't do any good to write books that are theoretically good, but kids don't want to read them.
Yeah, and I would say you both have done a fabulous job with this book. I can't imagine anybody picking it up and not finishing it really in one
well,
set.
Well, the thrill for us, the first event we did out of Louisville was with Muhammad's widow, Lonnie Ali, and Lonnie said that Muhammad would love this book. And that was just, the best thing that I think Kwame and I could hear.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to encourage people to add your questions, and in a little bit we'll start asking some of those in the conversation. But because the verse is such a big part of this book, and also such a big part of who Muhammad Ali was, in the way he spoke, and I think he also did spoken word. Anyway, Kwame, would you read a bit for us?
Yeah, I'll read a page. From it. Cassius was trying to convince his mother that he wanted to visit the Columbia boxing gym. He wanted to train. He wanted to learn how to box. So he had to convince Odessa, his mother, aka Bird, that boxing was something that she should allow him to do. So she finally, relented and let him join the gym. And then he just took it seriously. He had a lot of discipline, a lot of focus, ran every morning. And one morning he's coming home from his run with his brother Rudy, and his mother's on her way to work. She cleaned houses. She cleaned houses. And so they cross each other in the yard, and this is what happened. He shared this with her. My victory speech. The Olympics gave me quite the scare. Fought 3 rounds with the big old bear. Came at me all wild and frantic with fist of fury from across the Atlantic. Threw a big left and launched a right. Exploded on me like dynamite. But Cassius Clay did not retreat. I knocked him into the ringside seats. Yeah, he was strong, but I was stronger. If you thought he'd win, you couldn't be wronger. Who's the boss that shook up the world? Face so pretty, it's like a pearl. I'm the greatest you have been told. Now hand me my Olympic gold. Now this is him at 14 years old, trying to show his confidence and his prowess.
And the book it's not really about boxing. It's about this amazing kid growing up in the South in the 50s who had incredible focus. He wasn't a good student. He was probably dyslexic, but he was a good student of life. He really was. And he just saw stuff the way other people didn't see it. And I think music got rhyme into his head. He loved music. He loved music all the way through as an adult. But this is about a kid. And that's why I think a lot of kids love the book, because it's about a kid growing up and overcoming all the circumstances, all the things that say you can't. And his is always, I can. Oh, yes, I can. I can do that. I can do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's that quote? I love that quote that I'm the greatest.
I am the greatest, not because I am better than anyone, but because no one is better than me.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And that's what this book is about.
Yeah. And what a great message for all of us.
Totally.
When did
very, very appropriate message for Minneapolis right now, and pretty much every city.
Yeah. Now, when did you two start working on this? When did this process begin?
I want to say spring 2019.
Yeah.
Okay. So well before Louisville was so much in the news and on our minds.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally, yeah.
And before Breonna Taylor was killed. So what an interesting time to have.
Well, here's a thought on that. If Black Lives Matter on some level, if it's going to lead to more unity, which I think if it's really going to maximize the possibilities, it needs to. So you have in 2019 a Black man and a white man getting together to attempt to write a beautiful book about a beautiful human being. And that's at least a piece of the kinds of things that will, I think, move the country forward if we can do more of that. It's a piece of it.
And what I'll say is, long before Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, there was Yusuf Hawkins. There in 1978, I was living in Brooklyn, and my father took me on a march across the Brooklyn Bridge to protest the killing of a Black man in Crown Heights. So this has been going on, and what we talk about in the book is, one of the things we talk about is Ali faced, just like many Black people in the 1950s, a lot of obstacles that were rooted in racism and racial injustice. But he found a way, his parents found a way, his grandparents found a way, his community found a way to meet those challenges head on and to not only survive, but to thrive and become the greatest, the greatest heavyweight of all time, arguably, and a great humanitarian.
Yeah, and that, and so much of that comes out in this book. So again, such a well done job. All right, I think I'm gonna take a look here and see what questions we have in the question box. So you mentioned, that the estate first contacted you about writing a book about Muhammad Ali. How much say did they have in what you included about his childhood?
We always wanted to be respectful, and especially with Lonnie. Lonnie was very involved. Kwame, you can elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think the estate was a part of this process. And so, anecdotally, when I finished the first draft of Ali's voice, when we finished our first draft of the book, Lonnie had some notes for me. And some of the notes were, this isn't working. This particular part isn't working, Kwame. And at first my ego sort of took a hit, because I'm a writer. I think I know what I'm doing. And then it sort of dawned on me by the end of the conversation, because she said, it needs some work, but I believe you can do this. It dawned on me, Holly, that she's protecting Ali's legacy. Like she's the person who's in charge of protecting not only this sort of international iconic figure, but her husband. And so there's a certain, like Jim said, we had to be respectful of that. So balancing the respect and the artistic integrity, that's a tightrope that we had to walk. And I think we did it.
Well, the other piece of it is that legacy only will continue if we can continue to bring it to kids so that they know who Muhammad Ali is, really know who he is, not a couple of sentences about him, but really understand who he is as a human being and how important he is. How incredibly important. I mean, to me, he's one of the most important figures of my lifetime. Absolutely. Not because of his boxing. I mean, great boxer, but that's not why he's as important as he is, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I just wanted to thank Kim Hooper who gave us that good question. And it's interesting. I was thinking about of course. I know who Muhammad Ali was, but I was wondering, younger kids today, do they still know who Muhammad Ali is? I think, like you said, I think they do. I think they know him as, the greatest, one of the greatest, if not the greatest athletes. But I'm not sure that they know all the parts of his life and all the ways he was an incredible human being. And so again, I think with this book, what a wonderful way to give kids a full picture of this amazingly lived life.
And they can relate it to their own lives to be the best, to be the best that they can be. That's really a wonderful thing about the book.
Yeah. All right, let's see. A few more questions in here.
Is there really a little box there?
There is.
Okay.
Yeah. So somebody, let's see, I can't see the name, but somebody's wondering if you all have plans to write more about Muhammad Ali.
Kwame,
I don't know if there's. I'm gonna say this. This is the first book I've ever written where I feel like I left it all in the ring, where I put it all out there. There was nothing else I could have done to add to this project. I feel like this is pretty special, and I think part of that reason is been confirmed as to what Jim said. I mean, Lonnie Ali, Muhammad Ali's daughter, Hana Ali, they both said Muhammad would have loved the book. Like, that means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a part of Muhammad Ali's life that most people aren't aware of at all.
Right. Yeah. You don't hear much about his growing up. Yeah. Was for each of you, what was something surprising you learned about him?
Kwame?
Mm.
What's something surprising?
Well, for me, I just the focus that he had as a kid. I didn't know that much about him as a kid either. And, he wouldn't drink soft drink. He just always had this idea that he was going to be something great, whatever, maybe be the president, but he was going to be a great person. So he never drank soft drinks because he knew sugar wasn't good for him. And he would race a school bus to school instead of, riding on it. And he had a sense that something was wrong. He'd go to the supermarket with his mom. He's a little kid, 6, 7 years old, and be going, why is it white this and white that and white this? And why is it, why is Angel's fruit cake white and Devil's fruit cake is brown? And, he just, something was wrong. And he got it. And he got it when he was very little even. And that hit me.
I think my thing was a little bit, kind of a little bit different in that, I had a lot of crushes growing up. I remember Myra and Leslie, and that's probably too much information. You didn't ask all that.
You had to use their names. How to use
their name. So I had a lot of crushes growing up. So, and a lot of my friends did as tweens and teens. Cassius Clay was so focused, he did not have time for girls. Like, it wasn't that he wasn't interested, because he was a handsome guy, as proven later. I mean, he just didn't have time. He was so focused once he had his mind set on boxing, which was at the age of 12. And I found that to be just surprising and interesting, and it made perfect sense. Focus, discipline, hustle, drive, and what that does. And we see what happened.
Wasn't the story when he finally got a kiss from the one girl, he kind of fainted, right?
Yeah.
Really? Cassius Clay knocked him out.
Knocked him out.
Knocked him out.
Well, and I think you see that focus and commitment in other areas of his life too. I mean, whatever he was into, he was fully committed to. Mm-hmm. All right, so here's a question from Kay. What did you learn about the juxtaposition of Ali's discipline as a prize fighter and his essential peaceful intentions about the Vietnam War and willingness to go to jail for refusing to be drafted? Was there more to that part of his life that you learned in the research you all did in writing the book?
The thing I learned is that boxing was a vehicle. Like, he was headed on a path to be a great person who cared about people, who cared about the world, who cared about humanity. Boxing was just a vehicle to get him there. I don't think from my research, from what I gathered, he didn't want to be a boxer for boxing's sake. He used boxing to help him do the things he needed to do in this world, to provide for his family, to set things up for his community.
And the family and the community gave him a moral compass. He really, that was part of his upbringing, a big part.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, I mean, yeah, how wonderful to see that foundation that he had growing up.
Well, they're seeing, I just saw some research now. The weird thing about it, through this virus thing, is it's bringing families closer together, and kids are appreciating it. Mom and dad are home. There's bad things about that, but the kids are actually appreciating it. It's an interesting. There were just some stats I saw today.
Yeah.
And it's also, it's a testimony. It's kind of a sad testimony too, that he, and this may be controversial, that he had to use boxing as a tool, as a vehicle, that he didn't necessarily see there were other things. As an example, his father was a trained artist, was a wonderful artist, and who did not have the opportunity to really explore a career as an artist, as a fine artist during that time. And so he ended up taking on a job to provide for his family, where he painted signs.
Right.
Where he did art in a different kind of way. But I think maybe seeing that my father could not really explore and express the fullness of his creativity and a career in art, because of the racist society that they grew up in. And so I think maybe there's a sad testimony to that realization that boxing was the thing that he thought he had to do.
Sure, yeah. So you mentioned his dad being an artist, and that reminded me of a question I had when I was reading the book. There's a part where he takes Cassius to go see a painting that he had done at a church.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is that still there? Is that
that's a good question.
Well, he did ask that question. He asked us, were there no black angels?
Right.
Well, I know.
Yeah,
and that's such an important, powerful question.
If you go to any church, in particular black churches, you're probably going to find that in some of those churches. I've seen it. So if you're asking, are there still angels that are all white?
Oh, yeah. No. I'm asking,
Okay.
his dad's art in particular.
What about it?
So in the book, his dad, the place where his dad takes him to, is that still there?
That church.
I'm not sure.
Okay. So let's see. We have a question about your collaboration. Let's see. Deanne, I think, is who was asking this one. How did this collaboration for both of you compare to other collaborations you've worked on?
I didn't have to call Kwame Mr. President. No, it was good. Go ahead, Kwame. Yeah.
No, I think there are some writers you work with where, it's sort of like LeBron and the Lakers just won the championship. LeBron said there were some nights where he just turned it over to AD, Anthony Davis, you take over. There were some nights Anthony Davis said, LeBron, you take over. They trusted each other because they knew they were operating at a certain level, and they had that kind of mutual respect. Doesn't mean their other players didn't contribute to the victory. Rajon Rondo and J.R. Smith. So I think that there are different kinds of collaborators, and I just felt like I got a chance to work with LeBron James this time. And there was a certain kind of, trust and appreciation that just was pretty unique.
Yeah, I do think. I mean, we definitely trusted one another to do our thing. Yeah.
So Jim, you were mentioning, you started talking about in this unique time, things that are a little bit different for some challenging, but some good things. I'm curious for both of you, how has the past 6 months, our current unique situation, how has that changed your writing life?
I find that I'm writing more. Obviously,
Yeah, I am too, because I need to escape.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we're on lockdown. I mean, we've been on lockdown. It's a pandemic. We're in the house a lot, so I find that I have more time to write. I'm not on the road traveling, but I think the other part of it, culturally and philosophically, Toni Morrison said it best. This is a time for writers to not despair. This is a time for artists to not despair. They have to step up, because I think art is not just entertaining. It has the capacity to empower us in some ways. And so I'm a big fan of intelligent entertainment, Holly, and I feel like that's what this book is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm for me, it's highest common denominator. Things that a lot of people are going to be able to relate to, but relate to up here as opposed to down here. Unfortunately, there's a lot of lowest common denominator stuff, which I'm not a big fan of.
Mm-hmm. What have you had any significant challenges or things that have felt more challenging during this time?
You mean besides trying to?
I just think it's hard to, to me, you have to stay away from watching the news too much. I think it's toxic. It's just like it's going in your brain. It's going to blow up your head. So I think that's hard for everybody. Yeah. Anytime I talk to somebody on the phone, almost always, how you doing? I'm hanging in there.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that phrase over and over and over and over. But we're hanging in there. We're hanging in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's how do you remain hopeful? Like, I'm a pretty optimistic person. I like to think I live in a space of hope, and I have found hope to be a bit fleeting in these past 6 months. I've never felt like that. And so I have to constantly do things like writing this book to reinvigorate myself, to sort of find that hope, because I don't want to be hopeless.
Right. And I do think this book does provide hope. Yeah. Well, so one other question I'm wondering too, and Kwame, we were talking about this a little beforehand, is so right now, of course, you can't go travel to be with people to talk about your books in person. How has that impacted you?
Well, I get to play softball with my kid. I get to walk to school with her when she lets me. I'm home, which is great for her and me. Just, we haven't had that in the past few years because I've been on the road. So I got to tell you, I've been living a writer's dream in the midst of a nightmare. So I'm pretty, so there is sort of a silver lining here.
Yeah.
And you can do events like this, and it takes an hour, and it's a terrific event, as opposed to you go to Minneapolis and it takes 2 days.
Right.
So in some ways it makes it easier.
In some ways that's it. Well, also I think a wonderful thing now is a lot of people are reading more, because there aren't as many. They're not going to the movies mostly, and so they're reading more. And I do think one of the things that's been terrific in the, just before the book came out, we got starred reviews everywhere. Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, Horn. I mean, and tough ones, tough places to get them. Yeah. And that just begins to tell you that it's a book that really has something. And I really think it's something for kids. And I can't imagine any kid in this country, honestly, who wouldn't benefit. I'm not trying to sell it because I don't care about the money, but I do care about the money a little, Kwame. No, I really don't. But I can't imagine a kid that won't benefit from reading this book.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'm gonna sum up the reviews. It was two heavyweights who pull no punches, and it's a knockout novel.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
I think all of us here would agree with that.
Thank you.
So it looks like we're going to need to wrap up here in just a couple minutes. maybe as one last question, and in some ways you all have you both have already answered this, but the book just came out early October, so it's just now getting into the hands of kids. What is your biggest hope that any reader will take away from becoming Muhammad Ali?
I read that book and I walked away changed for the better. And I hope that, and this, I think, in terms of legacy, I hope 30 years from now, they're still teaching this book in school. This gets back to something you asked originally, Holly, and Kwame and I both agree about this. If you can tell a story that's a true story, it has some history in it, and readers can say, I'm there, I participate, I identify with it, that's a key thing. And I think kids are going to go and they're going to feel. They're going to feel that they're in Louisville. They're going to know this character. They're going to feel like they're right in these scenes. And I think that's vital.
Mm-hmm.
Be kind, be humble, be confident, be great.
Yeah. And I don't think people necessarily think about Muhammad that way, but they should. Be kind, be gentle, be great. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and those
be kind and be gentle, and you will be great.
Those are wonderful words for us to wrap up with. Be kind, be humble, be great. All right. Well, I want to thank you both for joining us at the Twin Cities Book Festival and for giving us this book for us all to enjoy and to share with younger readers in our lives. I do think it's an important, wonderful book for right now. So thank you both. For those of you joining us, there's more going on at the book festival. Check out the schedule. Many more kids events coming up too. At 11:30 is an event, Growing Up Graphic. And so that's one that probably many who are here will also want to join in on. Again, Kwame Alexander, James Patterson, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kwame, see you soon with Lawrence. That'll be a fun talk.
Looking forward to it. Talk to you, buddy.
Okay.
Cheers,
Take
everybody.
care, everyone.
Thank you.